exactly is a luxurious lifestyle? Let's talk about how can you do that and how can you do it without overspending?
People need to define what luxury means to them. I think there's a lot of key things to think about planning ahead, actually having a plan in place, having a timeline for when that's going to happen, and taking the appropriate amount of steps backwards, have everything in place for by the time that gets there. Make your funds stretch out by choosing what's the most important to you.
There's ways using technology, thinking out of the box to be able to get you access. Welcome to, that's right, another version of Wealth Strategies Unleashed with Concenture Wealth Management. By the way, I started it that way so that would throw Karen off. I'm Robert Gilliland, and with me I have
Karen Hyder.
Thank you all for joining us this week. Hold on. Before we get started, Karen, knowing that it's become this tradition and you have done so well with these.
Thank you.
Debatable. What dad jokes do you have for us?
Got a good one this week that I'm hoping I don't have to explain to you and you're going to catch right away.
Hold on. Number one, as I always say, we will determine whether it's a good one.
Okay. You ready for this?
I hope so.
All right. Why is dough another word for money?
Why is dough another word for money?
Because everyone needs it. Like you need the dough.
All right. Something you don't know about me is I do like to bake every once in a while.
Really?
And, I can actually appreciate that.
Okay.
It will be used. So good job.
Thank you.
Hey, Karen, going and thinking about us chatting today, was kind of thinking about something. One thing that we know is that you absolutely love living the lifestyle of the rich and famous. You love the luxury things. I told you I was going to give you a bad time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about how can you do that, and how can you do it on without overspending.
Yep. I think there's a lot of key things to think about when you are envisioning this life and wanting to live a more luxurious lifestyle. I'd say the very first one, and this probably comes as no surprise to anybody, is create a budget. You have to know money in, money out, what you're spending, where your money is going, and how much can you allocate. Because it's one thing to say you want to live a luxurious lifestyle, but it's another to be spending every last dollar and then some on that lifestyle.
Look, let's be real honest. The idea of a luxurious lifestyle, what would be a rule of thumb for, planning ahead?
Yeah, well, the very first one is what you just said, planning ahead, actually having a plan in place. So I read some statistics that said basically people that try to do things on the fly, so we're talking about inside of 2 or 3 weeks trying to go on a big vacation, you're going to end up spending so much more than if you were to plan ahead, say 6 months or more in advance. Think about the types of deals you get the farther out that you book. And the time that you can spend on doing your research and finding those deals makes such a big difference. So having a plan, setting the goal, the experience, whatever it is that you want to spend the funds on, having a timeline for when that's going to happen, and taking the appropriate amount of steps backwards to plan and have everything in place for by the time that gets there.
So what sort of traps are there?
There's a lot. Let's talk about the impulse purchase. Trying to, and this is a terrible phrase, but keeping up with the Joneses, trying to keep up with your friends and other people that you see, even with the amount of media that's in our face nowadays, whether it's social media or on TV or whatever the case may be, trying to keep up with what you're seeing everybody else doing. That can be everything from taking the big trips. It can be taking, or not just taking, spending, trying to buy the things that you see. I feel like the hot topic word I keep hearing about is the influencers on social media, trying to keep up with those influencers that are constantly giving you products in your face to buy, impulse spending and buying those items.
It's kind of funny thinking about keeping up with the Joneses. Mm-hmm. So, and this is an example of a client that we had or have that we work with, and absolutely great people. But they were going away to Europe for, I think it was 6 weeks.
Wow.
Remember? And I was like, how in the world are you going to go and do that? Well, they had planned so well that what they found was a place to stay at a reasonable, longer-term type of rate. Mm-hmm. They flew over there, which, by the way, they did fly first class over there. But then they hit like 10 different countries, mm-hmm. all in kind of 2 and 3 day stints. Because so I guess you can go online and do a search. I'm not real technologically advanced, but you can go online and do a search, and you can actually find really, really, really cheap flights on reputable airlines to go from Belgium to Portugal for like $49.
Yeah.
And they were able to experience, for me, being all of Europe and all those nice things because they went through and they did that planning. Now, were they staying in the nicest of places, or were they flying first class everywhere they went, and did they eat at the fanciest of restaurants? I don't know. I don't think so. But the whole point is that you can go through and plan and experience all of that, right? And so...
Well, and you just named a really key point in there. Think about what matters most to you if travel is what we're talking about for a second. There are ways to save the dollar and spend a little bit, take the lower option. And then there's the other things that you want to spend more on. So maybe you're someone, and we've got a client like this who has said they only want to fly first class at this stage in life. So maybe for you, you absolutely want to spend your dollars on the first class ticket. But in turn, maybe once you get to your destination, you're okay doing something on a lower budget for the next thing. So maybe you have a couple meals, your breakfast and lunch, you do as a lower budget item, and you focus your spending more on your evening dinner meal. So there's ways to make your funds stretch out by choosing what's the most important to you of those luxury items and what you're willing to scale back on to make it all fit.
Right. And it's kind of about this luxury type of lifestyle. And if you hang out with rednecks like I do and you say, I'm going to Europe, they think that that's luxury. They don't necessarily know if you're flying in the front of the plane or in the back. So it's a great way to kind of brag, to keep up with the Joneses and kind of brag about that. What are practical ways to balance saving? Because you still have goals, or in retirement. One of those goals, if you're in retirement and doing this, or close to retirement, it maybe isn't necessarily savings, but it's about making sure your money lasts. What are some ways to balance your financial future but still enjoy today?
Yep, I think one that I think of right away is using technology to our advantage. And what I mean by that is automating things. So automate your savings, automate your funds going to investment, so that for a lot of people, once you automate how much you're saving on a monthly basis, maybe it's 10%. 10% of every paycheck you have going into your savings or to your investment account. After a while, you don't even see that.
Right.
Well, that gets that money working harder. And then what you do take home after that piece is taken out, you're able to allocate towards some of those fun things. So using automation, using technology to our advantage can make it feel like you're still reaching your investing goals, your saving goals, but also spending on the things that are important to you and finding that balance.
You know, and I think you just said you use technology and stuff. There's so many ways that you can find or get access to these luxurious things, and not necessarily cost you a ton. And I'll tell you a funny story. It was a guy I used to work with. He was always driving what appeared to be a really, really expensive car. And he had multiple of them. I mean, like high-dollar Mercedes, high-dollar BMW. In Colorado, he had a Jeep that was like souped up, super, super stupid awesome, right?
Wow.
All these fancy vehicles. And they were always turning over. What I later found out is that they were salvage titled cars.
Oh, really?
He would buy wrecked cars. He had a good body guy that could replicate it. And there it was. That guy probably had, well, I know he's got a lot of money and he's extremely successful. He was really, really smart, so he could go and experience and enjoy those finer things. And I just think, you know, there's ways using technology, thinking out of the box, to be able to get you access to those things. You go through.
Wait, before you change topics, I feel like you're about to divert. I want to piggyback on that for a second. There's a lot of things. I'm sure some of the female listeners are going to be aware of what I'm about to say, but there's a lot of ways to live the luxurious lifestyle without owning those items. So key examples I think of, there's services now where you can rent fancy designer dresses for one-time events without having to spend and buy it. You can actually rent it and return it. There are rentable designer luxury purses nowadays.
You're kidding.
I've even seen that you can rent, and talking about your fancy cars, you can rent these cars for a day, have the experience, go for a countryside drive or whatever your experience is in that really nice car, and then return it at the end of the day. So you can still have these experiences and live this luxurious lifestyle without the funds behind it that are sometimes a trap.
Yeah, like I said, I hang out with rednecks, so luxurious is getting in a four-wheel drive that has air conditioning. But what exactly is a luxurious lifestyle?
Well, that's a very personal question. I think that's a great
sorry,
question to
didn't mean
bring
to
up.
offend you.
No, I mean for our listeners. I think the very key point in this whole conversation is people need to define what luxury means to them. I'm highly confident luxury to you is something related to hunting or being outdoors.
It's experience.
Okay, experiences in the outdoors, on the water, hunting an animal, something along that line. That's not exactly what I define luxury as. To me, luxury is more doing the travel experiences, going and seeing places, experiencing new cultures. That's luxury to me. So I think our listeners need to know that when you're talking about the luxurious lifestyle, what one person defines as luxurious is not the same as another person. So knowing what is luxurious to you is step number one. Then from there, it's figuring out how to live that luxurious lifestyle without breaking the bank or getting off track of the goals that you've set.
I think that when you're going through and looking at this, it's about those experiences, what is life like for you, pampering yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily talking about going and getting your toes did.
I was worried for a second,
like
the thought of you going and doing that.
Yeah, that would probably be horrifying. But, I think that if you sit down and you go through and you do planning and you think about those things that are important to you, the experiences, if it's actual material things, mm-hmm. The thing that I would tell you when you're thinking about luxurious material things is think about whether or not they're depreciating or appreciating assets, right?
Absolutely.
Or whether or not they could be destroyed in a moment's notice, mm-hmm. right? And I think that kind of, when you think of it from a standpoint of you want to own a 5,000 square foot house on the water along the Gulf of Mexico, you're going to pay a lot of money for that. Mm-hmm. And that's probably going to be pretty luxurious. But it could all be knocked down in 5 minutes with the right storm.
Yep.
Is it really worth that humongous investment that it would take, right? Maybe you can get that experience by renting and not necessarily owning and maintain that type of lifestyle, mm-hmm. right? I talk to a lot of people when they're thinking about, buying a second home. And every time I tell them, for the next year, go and stay there for a month, come home for 2 weeks, and go back for another month. Mm-hmm. And do that several times throughout the year. And if at the end of the year you're still like, you know what, I love Nowheresville, then okay, that's the place for you. But if it's not, just go rent and it's a heck of a lot cheaper.
Yep.
Well, and you get that experience.
Yeah. And I like your idea there too, because you experience all 4 seasons of the year in that location by doing what you just said. A lot of people view their vacation home destination as the best of the year all year. So if you like Florida a lot, you're picturing Florida in the summer. Maybe you really love the heat, but you're picturing that beachside, beautiful vacation that you get for that 1 week a year as what all year reality is. And that's just not the case in most locations. Maybe San Diego, that probably is year-round what that's like. But in most locations, there are different seasons. There's the not-so-great time as well as the beautiful, luxurious, great time. Going and experiencing it in all 4 seasons of the year allows you to see that and make sure that you're comfortable with what you're getting yourself into.
100%. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. Mm-hmm. I think luxury is around experiences and hopefully shared experiences. But there are ways that you can go and do it. The reality is that you can rent an awful lot of homes that are really, really, really nice, and it costs you a lot less than actually buying it.
Absolutely.
Right? Or if you say houses, vacation homes, or where it is. So, Karen, kind of with that, any other thoughts or?
I have one final one. I heard a really good strategy the other day, actually, for those material purchases. And we're not talking about homes here. We're talking about the smaller things, whether that be.
Well, let's face it, you're probably talking about jewelry.
Or shoes. One of the two. What I heard, though, was the $1 a day method. So let's say you have your eye on the next Air Jordans. I don't even know what these cost. Are these $150 shoes? Are these $200 shoes? What are we talking about?
I wear Converse. I don't know.
Let's say these are $200 shoes. So the dollar method basically in your mind, you equate $1 a day for this item and see, am I going to use it that number of days and does it make sense? So in the shoe example, okay, $200 shoes, $1 a day, are you going to wear these shoes for 200 days? If the answer is yes, then that's probably something that's worth the money to you to spend and an item that makes sense for you. On the flip side, if you have a TV in mind that is a $5,000 TV, are you going to watch this TV for 5,000 days before the next upgrade comes out and before you want to change that TV to something bigger and better? If the answer is no, maybe wait for the Black Friday sale or do something a little bit different.
Oh, that's interesting. It would seem to me that in the form of electronics, you probably would never purchase luxurious electronics because they're always going to be updating where it is if you did it. So there's going to be a little bit of a trade-off there. That's an interesting strategy, especially when it's for goods that may deteriorate or not be worth something. So interesting. Yeah. Awesome. Anything else?
That's all I got. What about you?
Nope, I'm good. Hey, thank you.
Absolutely.
That was good stuff, knowing that you like to live the luxurious lifestyle. And thank you all for joining us this week for Wealth Strategies Unleashed. We'll see y'all next week.
See you next time.
The information contained herein is intended to be used for educational purposes only and is not exhaustive. Diversification and/or any strategy that may be discussed does not guarantee against investable losses, but are intended to help manage risk and return. If applicable, historical discussions and/or opinions are not predictive of future events. The content is presented in good faith and has been drawn from sources believable to be reliable. The content is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. Please consult a legal, tax, or financial professional for information specific to your individual situation.
This work is powered by Concenture Wealth Management, registered representative of Sanctuary Securities, Inc., an investment advisor of Sanctuary Advisors, LLC. Securities offered through Sanctuary Securities, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC. Advisor services offered through Sanctuary Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Concenture Wealth Management is a DBA of Sanctuary Securities, Inc., and Sanctuary Advisors, LLC.